From Walt Disney working for the FBI to what actually goes on inside the walls of Area 51. Coming in at number 5, we have Area 51, a classic birthplace of conspiracies about aliens and UFOs, but do you know what actually goes on inside those highly secured walls? Located 120 miles northwest of Las Vegas, the base is a government-controlled piece of land. The ground space of Area 51 is so big that it's around the size of Connecticut. Surrounding the base, there is very little around it, far from modern living styles, and even lacks cell reception. And this is by design, as in 1954 the CIA was asked by the president to find a secret location and found what they were looking for here. Civilians are prohibited to enter the grounds of Area 51, with threats of a fine and imprisonment if civilians trespass or take photos of the building. In 2013, the CIA approved the release of declassified documents about the history of the site. This was the first time the US government acknowledged the existence of Area 51, even though it has been in operation since 1955. Area 51 is shrouded in mystery. According to ex-government sources, this mysterious area of Nevada is mostly a test site for experimental military technology, like the SR-71 Blackbird airplane, and now a secret extraterrestrial testing facility. Additionally, Area 51 is home to the nation's overhead surveillance program. It's where some of the most important spying aircraft in American history was assembled, tested, and ultimately sent out on missions. Experts say it likely remains an area for the Air Force and US spy agencies to develop the next generation of aircraft and other weapons of war. The conspiracies around Area 51 in relation to examining aliens are due to the multiple reports of reported UFOs around the grounds of Area 51. Though these weren't UFOs, they were the aircrafts the government was testing on the grounds. That being said, since it has forever been locked away from the public, it's not for certain exactly what goes on within the walls of Area 51. But the fact that it was declassified 60 years after it began operations is a bit scary if you ask me. In at number 4, we have John Lennon's CIA case. John Lennon is a pop culture icon and is best known for being one of the members of the Beatles, though the Federal Bureau of Investigation considered Lennon a threat. This is because the government wasn't too keen on a foreigner spreading anti-war, anti-Nixon messages to the rather large counterculture movement in the United States. Thus, the FBI did what the FBI does best and kept detailed surveillance records of Lennon's activities while actively trying to deport him. The FBI suspected Lennon would disrupt proceedings in the 1972 presidential election, where Nixon hoped to be re-elected, with a planned tour complete with voter registration efforts and anti-war protests. To help stop him, the Immigration and Nationalization Service, which would later be absorbed into the Department of Homeland Security, began deportation proceedings against Lennon. It appears that their preemptive efforts worked. Lennon never did the tour and Nixon was re-elected. It took 14 years for the FBI to release their files on John Lennon. Historian John Wiener spent those years fighting to gain access to the FBI's secret files on John Lennon. At first, the FBI refused to release many of the documents, saying their release would endanger national security. Wiener's Freedom of Information case went all the way to the Supreme Court before the FBI agreed to settle. In those files, it seems that their biggest concern was Lennon's association with radical anti-war activities, and his ability to influence voters to vote against the Nixon administration in the coming election. Therefore, the CIA led to the conclusion that his visa should be terminated in the interest of national security. John didn't go down without a fight though and fought this claim with lawyers. When that didn't work, the CIA tried to deport Lennon, this time by catching him for narcotics, even though the FBI doesn't enforce possession of narcotics charges as it is a state offense. That being said, the CIA proceeded to give the Miami FBI office a discreet porter to arrange a drug bust. However, all of Lennon's files were destroyed due to what they claimed to be part of a routine file destruction procedure, so this can't be known for certain. Coming in at number 3, we have the Bohemian Club. The Bohemian Club is an elite invitation-only social club founded in San Francisco in 1872. The Bohemian Club began renting the campground for an annual retreat before purchasing it outright in 1899. But what actually happens at the club? Well, in June and July, some of the wealthiest and most powerful men in the country flock to the Redwood Grove in Sonoma County, California. They're all members of this so-called Bohemian Club, a private all-male club that that's counted US presidents, military officials, artists, and business leaders as members. Over the years, a number of those gathered club members have happened to be US presidents. Because of its secrecy, strange ceremonies, and elite body of members, the Bohemian Club has long been the subject of sinister online rumors, with a number of journalists trying to infiltrate the campground just to try and get a glimpse of what actually goes on in the camp. The journalist Alex Shumatov was caught and detained for trespassing. Filmmaker Alex Jones had more success with his infiltration in 2000, where he entered the camp with a hidden camera. Jones was able to capture a ceremony called the Cremation of the Care. During this ceremony, members were seen wearing costumes and cremating a coffin before a 40-foot owl, while the reported Philip Weiss snuck into the Bohemian Grove in 1987 and spent a few days mingling with the rich and powerful. A former dining server described the club as a place where the elite could engage in behavior that doesn't usually fly for people of their stature in the regular world. In the 21st century, the Bohemian Club maintained its reputation for being highly exclusive, with a predominantly Caucasian membership composed of the richest and often most politically conservative men in the United States.
Alright, coming in at number 2, we have aliens. I mean, we were just talking about Area 51, so it only makes sense that we talk about aliens for a little bit. The government has known about aliens for a long time, and they just started telling us. They need to open the door and let us know all the things about these little green dudes walking around, because I want to become their friend and go on a crazy space adventure. Now, if you want to go really deep, you could say that aliens are running the government, and that is why they won't spill the beans. But that's not the vibe we're going for today. What I'm going to focus on is the fact that we know the government has been hiding the truth about aliens, because they recently declassified a lot of alien files and started showing us UFOs and the fact that they are real. They even released government footage of a UFO. There was a legit flying saucer caught on camera just floating around, and no one reacted at all. Mind you, the world was kind of on fire at that point with all the protests and coronavirus, but it's still crazy and no one cared. But here's what I'm thinking. There's no way that they told us everything. There's no way that the little bit of footage and documents that were shown to us was everything they have to offer. And the stuff that they're hiding is probably the best stuff. I bet they have a full alien language mapped out that you can learn on Rosetta Stone. And coming in at the number 1 spot, we have Jeffrey Epstein's involvement with the government. This is a massive conspiracy that is still in the forefront of most news stories. It is the wildest story to hit America mainstream media in years, and really it's just getting started. If you don't know what's going on, let me fill you in. Jeffrey Epstein was a mystery multimillionaire. No one really knew where he got his money from. He was associated with some of the most rich and powerful people in the world, people in the film and television industry, high-ranking government officials, even members of the royal family of England have connections to this guy. Jeffrey Epstein was a known human trafficker, and he had an island which we suspected was a place where rich and powerful people would fly to partake in human trafficking with victims that were not of legal age. I can't go into detail on what would happen there, it is too inappropriate for this channel, but when you hear private island, human trafficking, not of legal age, rich and powerful people, I think you can piece together what was happening. And if you want things in more detail, just literally Google Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, and I forgot to mention that Jeffrey Epstein had a plane which was nicknamed the Lolita Express. That alone is extremely disturbing. When you start to go into the flight logs on this plane, you start to find a lot of wealthy people. Many of them were high-ranking government officials. People like Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, Tom Pritzker, a member of one of the richest families in the United States, and former president of Colombia, Andres Pastrana. The list goes on and on. Then one day Jeffrey Epstein is arrested, and it looks like he's going to have to stand trial for all of his horrible offenses and spill the beans. But before he gets the chance, he mysteriously dies in jail. It seems very convenient that someone who could probably ruin so many rich and powerful people died out of nowhere. So the question is, how deep do the Epstein ties go into the government? And if you thought the story was over, oh, we are far away from the end. Epstein's right-hand woman, Ghislaine Maxwell, who was the person who would find many of these people to take to Epstein's island, is now under arrest and set to stand trial. And in a strange turn of events,
Coming in at number 2, we have Walt Disney working for the FBI. Who would have thought that the founder of Mickey Mouse and the Disney Empire served as an FBI informant? From 1940 until his death in 1966, Walt Disney secretly served in the FBI. Walt Disney served as a secret informer for the Los Angeles office of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. According to documents that have come to light about this secret arrangement, Disney was tasked with reporting on the activities of Hollywood actors, writers, producers, directors, technicians, and union activists suspected of political subversion. At this time, communism was on the rise around the world, and American officials were concerned about these ideals spreading into society. The documents report that during a strike of animators at the Disney studio in 1941, Walt Disney publicly accused the strike leaders of communistic agitation. When Disney, whose right-wing leanings were well known, testified before the House of Committee on Un-American Activities in Washington, he named several of the animators who had led the strike as communists. In return for Disney's information, the director of the bureau allowed Disney to film in the FBI headquarters in Washington. For his part, Disney allowed the director access to Disney scripts and make changes in movies and episodes of the Mickey Mouse Club television show. Due to Disney providing the bureau with information and doing such a good job, he was named Full Special Agent in Charge Contact in 1954. This title was given to those who were trusted informers that is able to provide transportation and equipment, as well as public relations services to the bureau. And finally, in at number 1 we have they investigated ESPs. The extrasensory perception, also known as ESP, is considered a sixth sense, including claimed reception of information not gained through the recognized physical senses but sensed with the mind. According to the FBI Vault, ESP is considered a perception of information about events beyond what may be discerned through the 5 physical senses or deduced from past experience or knowledge. The FBI's interest in ESP goes back to 1957, when the bureau was contacted by a man called Foose, who claimed that he could teach the blind to see. While CIA was not impressed by the tricks of Foose, it wouldn't be the end of the agency's or the FBI's interest in psychic and paranormal phenomena. From there, the FBI once spent time and money investigating extrasensory perception. There has also been reports of experimenting with ways to weaponize people with ESP. This was a highly secret program during the 1970s by the government that took place in research labs in California. The bureau attempted to look at the phenomenon from a rational and logical viewpoint, using cold hard science and math, much like the CIA and DIA later would. In their attempt to construct a laboratory test to objectively measure psychic phenomena, the results of the laboratory tests that they held remain unknown, as the files were excluded from the FBI's release. Considering the interest of the Army and CIA in the FBI's psychic research, whatever their results were likely helped justify the future course of the intelligence community's research into psychic perception. Based on concerns ESP could be used as part of an international spying, the FBI spent more than 3 years looking into the phenomenon before they concluded there was no scientific support for their concerns.
Coming in at number 5, we have secret experiments. This is nothing new. The government has been up to all sorts of secret experiments. If we go back through the 20th century, we have things like MK Ultra. This is when the CIA and the American government was obsessed with mind control and trying to find some way to implement it into warfare and interrogations. Some of the things they would do is take someone and put them in isolation for an undetermined amount of time and see if they would break mentally and start giving up information. They would mostly do this on prisoners that had no idea they were part of an experiment. Wow, that definitely sounds ethical, but that isn't even the most notorious part. What the experiment is really famous for is when the CIA would use LSD, that is a hallucinatory drug known as acid, to try and control people's minds in interrogations. They would give people doses of LSD without them knowing and put them under extreme questioning. Once again, they would do this to people who had no idea they were being experimented on. Eventually, the tests were all stopped and a lot of the information on the studies was released to the public. Some people think that this was just a lost attempt at trying to find a way to control people, but other people are convinced that the government was successful in finding some way to take control over people's minds. So this begs the question, what kind of secret studies or experiments is the government conducting now? We think that they've learned their lesson from their mistakes, but it's the government. They are the masters of doing things that cost tons of money and that are extremely unethical. This is their bread and butter, baby. They could be doing tests on artificial intelligence without us knowing, working on making a living, thinking AI that has the ability to feel emotions and make complex decisions. Not only would this be terrifying, but the tests they could be running could be seen as as some sort of torture in the future. Coming in at number 4, we have receiving data from social media companies. When it comes to data and information, we know that the government can't be trusted. They will find some way to get your stuff. It doesn't matter what your data is. Do you spend 2 hours a day looking at memes? The government wants to know about it. Do you have a habit of ordering McDonald's delivered right to your house even though you live 5 minutes away from the nearest Donnie's? The government wants to know about that too. Am I just sharing with you my bad tendencies that I should probably stop because they are holding me back? That could be a possibility too. But we already know that the NSA was looking at all your phone calls, all of your emails, and collecting all of your data back in 2013, and you think just because we caught them they were gonna stop? No way! Then Facebook got caught for selling data, and you don't think that other major companies aren't doing the same thing? Data is the most valuable thing on the planet right now, and there's no way that the government doesn't have their hands in the pot somewhere. That was the big problem with TikTok. It's Chinese owned, so America didn't want their data flying out to another country from the American people, but they are perfectly fine with it staying in the hands of the American people, probably because they're getting a piece of it. Coming at number 3, we have secret weapons, especially in America where the military funding is through the roof. Who knows what sort of technological advancements are happening behind closed doors? I don't think we will ever know what's going on until they want us to know. Places like Area 51 have stayed secret forever, and even when there was supposed to be a massive raid, which just turned out to be a bunch of people hanging out in the desert for a good laugh, none of the secrets have leaked out. Well, not none of them. There are some people who have claimed to work at Area 51 and have leaked some secrets. Most famously is Bob Lazar. If you follow the content I'm a part of, then you will for sure have heard me talk about Bob Lazar before. He is known as the man who worked at Area 51 and then started spilling the beans about what was going on there. There's a documentary about him on Netflix, and he has been on Rogan talking about some of the stuff that he worked on. Now, Bob has never claimed to work on any sort of weaponry. He says that all the stuff he worked on had to do with flight. He was working on a new type of spaceship that can move faster than anything we could comprehend. Basically, the way he described it is these secret spaceships use what's called a gravity reactor, which bends gravity around them that lets a ship move at an insane speed. It's a form of propulsion that was thought to be impossible, and he says that it's not only possible, but it uses something called element 115 to happen. This is the substance that is used in the gravity reactor. Even though Bob has never worked on anything to do with weaponry, he did mention that there was some sort of evidence of weaponry testing and design using element 115. What on earth could that look like? What does a gravity gun or gravity bomb do to a person or an entire city? Bob worked with the government in Area 51 back in the 80s, so who knows what kind of advancements they have made since then. The American government could be hiding a weapon that could have the destructive capabilities to take out an entire country or blow up the moon. Or if they could shoot nukes faster than the speed of light, there wouldn't be a lot of time to get shelter and protect your people if that gets fired at you. Well, let's hope we never have to experience something like that, because I don't want the world ending right now. There's also things like Project HARP, a system of radio towers in Alaska that apparently have the ability to control the weather and even cause things like powerful earthquakes. Imagine you could weaponize the weather, cause lightning and hail to decimate your enemy. It would be like they're in the movie Geostorm. You could make the terrain too cold to fight on, or make the weather too erratic for your enemy to grow crops to feed their troops. They would quickly be bending the knee to your godlike power. There's also rumors that Project HARP has the ability to send out a low frequency signal to a large area and cause an entire population to pass out. You could incapacitate an entire city.
In at number 5 we have North Korea. North Korea is one of the most strict and repressive countries in the world, so it's safe to say they like to hide a lot of things about their country from the rest of the world. Many things in North Korea are illegal, and these certain things that we in the Western world would think is nuts. For example, it's forbidden to take pictures of the daily life of the North Korean people that are not well dressed. Photographer Eric Lafforge visited this mysterious country a whopping 6 times to try and understand more about the people, places, and the strict strict authoritative way of life. Eric wasn't interested in the carefully orchestrated tourist trips revealing only fake North Korea facts. He wanted to go beyond that, to catch a domestic glimpse of the land and people that aren't under the complete control of the regime. I was treated like any other tourist, Eric stated. They didn't allow me to take pictures of the police, the army, etc. But with a 300mm zoom lens and a seat in the back of the bus, I could take so many. He shot thousands of pictures showing citizens and government officials going about their everyday lives. As soon as they were opening a new area to visit, I tried to go and see it, documenting the life in North Korea. After Eric returned home in 2012, however, the government discovered him sharing secretly taken North Korean photos online. They demanded him to take down the images. I refused, as they showed all the aspects of the hermit kingdom, the good and the bad, just like I do with any country I visit. I refused to make an exception for North Korea, and they didn't like this. Soon the regime banned Laforge from crossing its border ever again. Kim Jong-un is so strict and many things about North Korea not shown to the world and kept very secretive. We may never know what else they are hiding. In at number 4 we have Tank Ban, China. On June 5th, 1989, there were protesters at the Tiananmen Square, and the Chinese troops began violently cracking down on these pro-democracy demonstrators who had been in the square for over a month. Jeff Widener watched and photographed as a man confronted the lead tank, standing directly in front of it. The tank stopped and tried to go around the man. The man moved, and at one point during the standoff, the man climbed aboard the lead tank and spoke to whoever was inside. The man was eventually pulled away by onlookers. To this day, we don't know who he is or what happened to him, but he remains a powerful symbol of defiance, and the Chinese government did not like this and didn't want the world to see their people disobeying authority. Practically any image that so much as gestures at the famed photograph of a man in front of a line of tanks risks deletion from the country's closely monitored web. Recreations showing a line of books approaching a cigarette package, a swan before an oncoming truck, or a grasshopper in front of a tire have all been removed. The Chinese government's utmost priority is discouraging unified anti-establishment action, but does more than prevent political unrest. Jason NG, the author of Blocked on Weibo, states that clearly it is not only protests that are being censored. There is some sort of intentionality, he said. It's fascinating to think through the moral reasons why things are removed. How does the government try to shape social mores? How do they try to shape culture through censorship? Some removed images are unsurprising, depictions of state-sanctioned violence, cartoons disparaging government leaders, and aerial shots of protests. All images, even harmless ones, of top Chinese political leaders are banned, except on official websites and approved blogs.
Number 2 on this list is lost plutonium. Okay, so this one is honestly just negligent. Charlotte Children details what happens by writing, "The United States and India came together for a joint mission in the 1960s that, if successful, would monitor China's nuclear development. The goal was to install radioactive isotope Pu-238 powered sensors, but hazardous conditions forced the team to evacuate the Himalayas before the installation was complete. When they returned, the sensors had vanished. No one has tracked down the plutonium devices, but locals believe that they are still active in the area and are responsible for melting mountain caps that are causing massive floods." Alright, so just think about that, guys. The government literally just lost a bunch of extremely dangerous plutonium and then was like, "Ah, shucks, I guess we'll just leave it then," and then left the Himalayan mountains in a state of disarray. They're now causing major negative environmental impacts on the mountains and those who live around them. Not to mention the entire other aspect of this. What if someone we don't want finding a bunch of dangerous plutonium found a bunch of dangerous plutonium? Plutonium can be used to make nuclear weapons, and having some rando just pick this thing up in the Himalayas probably isn't the best thing for society. This is why this failed venture hasn't been talked about too much, and the government likes to keep it under wraps. Next time though, guys, let's try to be more careful what we do with the super dangerous, super radioactive chemical, I think. Number 1 on this list is Project Sunshine. This thing was just totally messed up and is truly almost unbelievable. Wikipedia writes, "Project Sunshine was a series of research studies that began in 1953 to ascertain the impact of radioactive fallout on the world's population. The project was initially kept secret and only became known publicly in 1956. Commissioned jointly by the United States Atomic Energy Commission and USAF Project RAND, Sunshine sought to examine the long-term effects of nuclear radiation on the biosphere due to repeated nuclear nuclear detonations of increasing yield. With the conclusion from Project Gabriel that radioactive isotope SR90 represented the most serious threat to human health from nuclear fallout, Project Sunshine sought to measure the global dispersion of SR90 by measuring its concentration in the tissues and bones of the dead. Of particular interest was tissue from the young, whose developing bones have the highest propensity to accumulate SR90 and thus the highest susceptibility to radiation damage. Sunshine elicited a great deal of controversy when it was revealed that many of the remains sampled were utilized without prior permission from the deceased or from relatives of the dead, which wasn't known until many years later. Okay, so let's just go over that last part again, guys. People didn't know that the government was testing on dead bodies of their loved ones. The American government was literally stealing the dead bodies of their citizens, prioritizing the bodies of the young when they did it, and then releasing a horribly radioactive chemical around them to see what would happen. And also, who the hell named this? Project Sunshine? What the hell is possibly bright and sunshiny about this? This is just messed up, man. It's no wonder the government wanted to keep this a secret. They knew that this was horribly wrong and bad. I guess we just need to cross our fingers and hope that something like this isn't happening secretly under our noses right now. Number 5 on this list is your fingerprints. Authorities having access to fingerprints and the whole development of using them to identify criminals in law enforcement, it really changed the entire policing game. Identifying people became a lot easier and gave you actually indisputable proof of what they had and hadn't touched. Now, most of us probably think about this whole fingerprint game and believe that it only applies to those who have already been incarcerated. They go to jail, and while they're in jail, a record of their fingerprints are taken down so that if they ever do anything again or are in question of doing something, then we have a way of knowing for sure. However, it turns out that you don't actually need to be in jail for the FBI to be holding on to your prints. Buying a gun, getting a background check for a job, or even getting your driver's license are all locations where you may need to put your fingerprint down. Well, apparently this info isn't just thrown away, but it's actually sent to the massive FBI database holding all the prints. They have over 100 million fingerprints recorded at this database, and now you're part of it without even knowing it. Maybe I'm a little old school, but I feel like this is a bit of an invasion of privacy, or at least it feels pretty backhanded considering I'm not even aware that it's happening. Like, I suppose it would be one thing if they made it totally clear that your prints were going in there. I still wouldn't love that, but at least I'd know. By hiding it, it really feels super creepy and kind of slimy. I don't know, guys. Comment down below what you think about this. Should everybody have their prints collected or only people with criminal records? I'm curious to know. Number 4 on this list is the most wanted list. Most of us are probably pretty familiar with the FBI's most wanted list. Usually it's filled with some of the worst criminals that the world has to offer, and they're typically tied to crimes involving murder or high-ranking positions in drug trafficking rings or even terrorist organizations. Either way, these individuals are usually considered some of the most dangerous people on the planet. However, that may not necessarily be true. This list, although it's certainly filled with some of the worst criminals in the world, shouldn't be looked at as the top 10 most dangerous people. The media and even the FBI kind of portray it that way, where the people shown on this list are the top 10 criminals in the world and they must be stopped, but it's very likely that there are far more dangerous criminals than them who are being withheld from this list. If you happen to be a criminal and you also happen to have individual features which are pretty bland and basic, then it's your lucky day, because it's very likely that the FBI won't be putting you on their list. This list isn't based off of the severity of your crimes, it's actually heavily influenced by the looks of the criminals. If a criminal has something unique about them, a tattoo is very prominent, maybe a scar that can't be missed, or just one of those faces that you could never mistake, then they'll probably make the list. Michael S. Schmidt, a New York Times reporter, says bureau officials try to select dangerous fugitives who could be recognized by the public because they have distinctive physical features. So even though we think of this list as the most dangerous criminals, it's actually just the most dangerous criminals with a unique look. It's very possible that there are some other fugitives out there that just aren't unique looking enough, so we won't ever know about them. Number 3 on this list is the Grim Reaper. The Grim Reaper, as we know it, is an entity that you really don't want to run into. Therefore, anyone who through their brutalistic behavior has earned the nickname the Grim Reaper is also somebody who you probably don't want to run into. Mike Devlin writes, "Mafia nicknames are often less than intimidating, but Gregory Scarpa's savage nature earned him a pretty tough one. The Grim Reaper. Scarpa rose through the ranks of the Colombo crime family but was collared in 1962 for armed robbery. Realizing what a potential asset they had on their hands, the FBI offered him an informant deal and Scarpa accepted the job to keep himself out of jail. Over 3 decades, the mafioso had a tumultuous relationship with his FBI handlers. He was a brutal, tough man. Later in life, he would try to self-medicate a bullet wound to the eye by pouring scotch into it. Yeah, I know, insane. But the agency used that to their advantage. According to some sources, he was sent to Mississippi in 1964 to uncover the fate of 3 missing civil rights workers. The FBI gave him a gun and bribe money and sent him on his way. Unencumbered by the regulations which law enforcement agencies are forced to work under, he kidnapped a KKK member from the store where he worked. Scarpa viciously beat the man, then shoved a gun in his mouth until he revealed the location of the men's graves. So this move from the FBI really is not cool, guys. They literally got a convicted felon who, let's face it, has probably murdered people before, to go and do their job for them. They gave this convicted felon a gun and money to get it done, and then was okay with his methods for how he conducted his business. Morally speaking, this does not seem like an okay thing for this agency to do. Not only should George probably be behind bars, but giving somebody nicknamed the Grim Reaper a gun and sending them on their merry way probably isn't the safest thing to do either. This also isn't the only time the FBI has worked with questionable individuals and groups before, and it probably won't be the last.
In at number 3, moon landing, flag flying in the wind. One of the biggest conspiracy theories is the first moon landing was real or faked by NASA with the help from the US government. The most famous picture shows Buzz Aldrin planting an American flag in the soil of the moon, and it appears the flag is moving, clearly showing the presence of wind, which is impossible in space. NASA says Aldrin was twisting the flagpole to get into the moon's soil, which caused the flag to move. In the late 1960s, the space race was a competition between nations regarding achievements in the field of space exploration, and that was the United States' motivation. They wanted to win the space race and be the first ever to land on the moon, ahead of the Soviet Union, and they would do anything to be the first and beat out all of the others. Conspiracy theorists claim that NASA faked their landings to avoid humiliation and to ensure that it continued to get funding. NASA raised about $30 billion to go to the moon, and this could have been used to pay off many people. Since most believed that sending men to the moon was impossible at that time, they argue that landings had to be faked to fulfill J.F. Kennedy's 1961 goal that before this decade is out, we will land a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth. In fact, NASA accounted for the cost of Apollo to the US Congress in 1973, totaling $25.4 billion. Virgil Grissom, Edward H. White, and Roger B. Schaefer were 3 astronauts who died in a fire while testing equipment for the first moon mission. It's theorized that this was no accident, and they were in fact executed by the US government, who feared they were about to disclose the truth. Due to the power of the government, we may never really know the truth of the moon landing, but since this famous photo was released, it had been highly criticized, and the government and NASA have done everything they can to get it off the internet and keep the world quiet. In at number 2, banning of Winnie the Pooh in China. For many, Winnie the Pooh and his gang was something we all grew up on, was pivotal in our childhood, and is ingrained in our memories of growing up. But China banned Winnie the Pooh, so many kids may never know of these cute characters. The Chinese government gives internet censorship a whole new meaning. The Chinese name for and images of the plump, cute cartoon characters are being blocked on social media sites because bloggers have been comparing him to China's president. It started when Chinese President Jinping visited the US in 2013, and an image of him and then President Barack Obama walking together spurred comparisons to Winnie the Pooh walking with Tigger. Jinping was again compared to the fictional bear in 2014 during a meeting with Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe when they had one of the most awkward handshakes ever, and then the internet responded with Winnie the Pooh and Eeyore shaking hands with side-by-side images showing both. And then there was the time the president popped his head out the roof of his special red flag limousine to inspect the troops, and after that photo appeared online of a toy of Winnie the Pooh popping out of his own little car. It is not only that China's censors will not tolerate ridicule of the country's leader, they do not want this beloved children's character becoming a kind of online euphemism for the Communist Party's general secretary. In other countries, such comparisons might be thought of as harmless enough or become a funny viral meme, but not in China. Even in 2018, when the film Christopher Robin was coming out, China had banned it from their country. And finally, in at number 1 we have UFO sightings. Unidentified flying object sightings have been reported throughout history in various parts of the world, raising questions about life on other planets and whether extraterrestrials do in fact exist. The first well-known UFO sighting occurred in 1947 when Kenneth Arnold claimed to see a group of 9 high-speed objects near Mount Rainier in Washington while flying his small plane. Arnold said he thought the speeds were several thousand miles per hour and they moved like saucers skilling on water. That same year, a rancher named Mac Brazel came across a mysterious 200-year-long wreckage near an army airfield in Roswell, New Mexico. The local papers reported it was the remains of a flying saucer, but the US military issued a statement saying it was just a weather balloon, even though the photograph of the mysterious object suggested otherwise. Throughout the next few years, sightings of unidentified aerial phenomena increased, and by the early 1950s, people's obsession with UFOs was skyrocketing. This led the CIA to prompt the US government to establish an expert panel of scientists to investigate the phenomena. The panel was headed by H.P. Robertson, a physicist in California, along with other physicists, an astronomer, and a rocket engineer. These group findings said that these sightings could be attributed to astronomical and meteorological phenomena or earthly objects such as aircrafts, balloons, birds, or searchlights. Parts of the panel's report were kept classified until 1979, and this long period of secrecy helped fuel suspicion of government cover-up. It has been highly debated that the government is covering up these sightings by the public to shut them up and give them false answers like these UFOs are just military aircrafts or weather balloons. Many sightings of UFOs have been seen in the area around Area 51, which is a highly classified place in Nevada. Area 51 is used as a government base for secret military Air Force activity, and they have a connection to classified aircraft research. It wasn't until 2013 did the CIA publicly acknowledge the existence of the base and the true work they do at this secret airbase. It's not known by anyone. Area 51 is so secretive that they have armed security around the perimeter and signage advising trespassers that deadly force is authorized. The base also is equipped with high levels of security like surveillance cameras and motion detectors all over the place. Remember when everyone was going to storm Area 51? What a time to be alive.
Number 5. The story of Edgar Mitchell. Edgar Mitchell is a storied man. He's part of an incredibly exclusive club out of 12 other people who can claim that they have seen the Earth standing on the surface of the moon. I assume they all have a group chat together. He's best known for typing 80 lines of code to save the Apollo 14 mission as it descended to the moon in 1971. He was the 6th man to ever walk on the moon, and he is a devout believer in aliens being out there. He insists that he knows that top government and military officials were hiding the truth behind aliens in New Mexico. He said it was a known secret that alien spacecraft were responsible for disabling nuclear missiles and shooting them down, supposing that aliens are directly involved in intervention to prevent us from destroying the planet. Which, if that's the case, I've got nothing but thanks to give for our extraterrestrial friends. Thanks for that. We're not that responsible. He goes on to insist that the Roswell incident was real, and the government had covered it up and buried it as a conspiracy theory to deter people from finding out the real truth, which he believes NASA thinks the public simply wouldn't be able to handle. In 2004, he told a Floridan newspaper that he knew of a secret cabal inside the American government that was responsible for studying alien bodies, and that after JFK, this group no longer answered to the president and didn't include the commander-in-chief in their briefings. Mr. Mitchell is quoted as saying, "They all know that UFOs are real. The question is, where are they coming from?" Now, NASA didn't quite have the same tune. NASA themselves obviously denied all of Mitchell's statements, saying that Edgar Mitchell is a great American, but we don't share his opinions on this issue. Well, of course. If you've been sitting on a secret for 60 years, you're not gonna fold over one guy, but a bunch of evidence? Well, maybe. My goblins, you know what time it is. If you've been digging the scares, stick around and subscribe for some scary stuff every single day. Okay, let's creep on. Number 4, Luis Elizondo. Luis Elizondo is one of the most outspoken believers in aliens and UAPs out there today, alongside Tom DeLonge, championing that he believes firmly that NASA and the Pentagon aren't telling us all the whole truth. And he would know, as Elizondo formerly led a research team to research potential UFOs. Although the project was disbanded, Elizondo never gave up his mission, believing it to be his personal calling to expose the truth. He's been quoted many times saying, "My personal belief is there's very compelling evidence we are not alone." He served on the Department of Defense and resigned in 2012 over excessive secrecy surrounding the UAP program. These aircraft, we'll call them aircraft, are displaying characteristics that are not currently within the US inventory, nor in any foreign inventory that we are aware of, Elizondo said of the objects they researched in his time there. He added that the program was founded to analyze unexplained aerial phenomena and ascertain whether or not that what they were seeing is a threat to national security or not. Kind of unnervingly, when asked about that, he said, "We found a lot. We identified anomalous aircraft that are seemingly defying the laws of aerodynamics." Which, oh hey, coming from the mouth of someone who worked at the Pentagon, that seems just a little bit suspicious, right? Right? Not just me? The quote continues, "Things that don't have any obvious flight services, any obvious forms of propulsion, and maneuvering in ways that include extreme maneuverability beyond, I would submit, the healthy G-forces of a human or anything biological." Elizondo's gone so far in the past as to suggest that he thinks the US government has fragments of UFOs or UAPs somewhere, reverse engineering it to learn all their secrets. Sounds extremely like someone higher up didn't want people finding out about whatever Elizondo was getting onto. And why not? Number 3, the signal. Now when it comes to aliens, we all kind of assume in the back of our heads that our first direct contact with them is going to be very up close and personal. That they'll come down and hopefully we'll see them face to face or face to mandible, or perhaps we'll see their ships descending on us and it's already too late. But what if our first contact was something else? A radar signal, a noise through the silence of space. In 2003, astronomers working for the SETI, short for the Search for Extra Intelligence, a project dedicated to hunting for extraterrestrial life, were using a massive telescope to look to the stars. Now nothing much came of it except for a series of unexplained radio signals from the skies. These signals all disappeared over time except one, which was growing stronger and stronger. The signal comes from somewhere between the constellation of Pisces and Aries, and curiously, the signal is at a frequency that absorbs and emits energy. Naturally, the researchers found this a bit interesting. Some of the astronomers believe that this could be a frequency that extraterrestrials are using to try and get our attention, like an intergalactic "you up" text. While it could very well have turned out to just be totally nothing or some sort of natural explanation that I'm not nearly smart enough to understand, I'm gonna err on the side of extraterrestrials. But we have to wonder what the signal was, right? I mean, we have to admit that's a bit suspicious, that there's something worth looking into there. Now this story is from 2003 and I had trouble finding an update on it, but who knows? Whatever was broadcasting that could still be out there.
Number 5 on this list is secret laws. Now I wish I could be more specific about which secret laws I'm referring to, but if I knew that, then they wouldn't be secret in the first place. I wasn't actually aware of this, but the government of the United States, and I'm assuming other governments around the globe as well, can pass secret laws. These are laws that are specifically not revealed to the public and are just on a need-to-know basis. Full-on legal laws that are now put into practice are getting secretly signed and passed by the higher ups, and we have no idea what they could even be. This could literally range from making the word ketchup illegal to, I don't know, making it totally legal to steal a car on the 30th of August if there's a full moon out. Alright, so obviously those are wildly extreme examples, and I doubt that those things are actually happening, but you get my point. In America, these laws are called Presidential Policy Directives, which is a fancy way of saying that it's an executive order from the president, which can be revealed to the public if they wanted to, or can remain secret. These don't happen in just crazy times of crisis either, they happen a lot more frequently than you may believe. During his time in office, President Obama signed 43 different PPDs, and to this day, there are 16 of them that the public literally has no knowledge of whatsoever. That is a lot of laws that are just floating around that we literally don't know anything about. Now one has to imagine that these probably don't concern the public and has to do with other secretive government stuff, but what secret government stuff does it concern? Secret deals going down with other other countries, covert missions that the public can't know about, anything regarding extraterrestrials. This is all on the table with these PPDs, and we may honestly never know. A fun and also scary statistic is that President Reagan, when he was in office, passed at least 325 PPDs. That is just an insane amount of laws that we don't know anything about. It also begs the question, is this too much power for the president to have? Comment your thoughts down below about these things. Honestly curious to know what you guys think. Number 4 on this list is criminal hackers. One would think that hacking should be something that the government would excel at, that they would be pumping money into hacking programs to train people to become elite at that skill. This actually isn't the case though, and the FBI isn't as good as they'd like. This is why when something needs to be hacked or something needs to be protected from hacking, they enlist the help of criminal hackers. People who've been convicted of hacking related crimes and are now behind bars. This is a win for hackers because if they help the FBI, then they'll receive a lighter sentence. This also isn't the first time the American government has looked to criminals for support. How about Operation Paperclip? After the Second World War, the United States government reached out to German scientists and brought them in to help them build the atomic bomb. Now they're doing something similar with convicted criminals to help them with other things. Obviously, the government doesn't like to talk about this too much because enlisting criminals doesn't make the public feel too great, especially if you're the one who was targeted by said criminal. If I was the American government, or any government for that matter, I'd be taking some of that military funding of theirs and tossing it into hacking. It really does seem like the way of the future. Number 3 on this list is Churchill's secret UFOs. Winston Churchill is known for his overwhelming leadership of the British people during one of their most trying times, World War II. What he often isn't known for though, because he made sure that this never got out, was his deep fascination with UFOs. Files that weren't released until 2010 actually revealed that the British government under Winston Churchill were more than fascinated with the presence of UFOs and aliens in our universe. In fact, they had a task force that met weekly to discuss such things as how to contact or capture said UFOs. There are thousands and thousands of documents that were released detailing just an obscene amount of things in relation to aliens and UFOs from the British government. We now understand that this was a massive operation for the British government and Churchill, but at the time, nobody knew about it at all. This was because Churchill apparently didn't want to cause any panic for the people and kept all of this info completely under wraps. I find it interesting how invested they were in this alien and UFO narrative though. I think it's safe to assume that these days most governments are looking into extraterrestrial life, but Churchill had his people deep down the rabbit hole. This also kind of begs the question, well, is there still more to the story that we don't know about? I wouldn't be surprised if sometime from now more documents are revealed that potentially point to Churchill and the British government having some encounters with said extraterrestrials that we were never privy to.
Number 2, Blue Book. Now, I think we all kind of secretly suspect that some of our tax dollars are going to research aliens. I mean, what else are they doing all day? Well, in one form or another, government agencies have always been researching UFOs and UAPs. Since 1949 to 1969, Project Blue Book was the code name for a secret government research division dedicated to analyzing UAP technology, analyzing whether or not UAPs on record were threats to air and national securities, and just what any of this stuff in the sky was. It was basically the closest thing we had to a real-life X-Files department, as far as we know. I mean, there could be an even more secret one. Surely with all that government money, they must have found something special, right? Well, if you'd like to feel like Agent Mulder yourself, you can scroll through 130,000 pages of declassified documents from UFO specialist John Greenwald, who made it all available for free online. He's a defender of free information. Greenwald says secrets are not bad things. I think we should know about this, and it should be in the history books. John, I completely agree. All this stuff about cover-ups, we can totally handle finding out aliens are real, okay? You know, we're big now, we're responsible, we learned about Santa, we can do this. A couple years ago, we experienced a wave where there were clowns hanging out on the street corner of like every rural street in North America. We got over that. We all saw Tiger King together. Aliens won't even be that weird, I don't think. Now, Project Blue Book was officially disbanded because according to a joint review, nothing significant ever came from it. Now, since then, it was thought that no government agency was looking into UAP research at all, except until the UAP document quietly dropped this year, you know, sneaking it under the door that NASA and the Air Force had been researching aliens and possible sightings this whole time. time under everybody's nose, and they leaked a bunch of documents and footage, and you should look it up after this video because I'm not joking, it's totally real. It seems just like us, NASA can't rest until they find the truth out there. Number 1. New developments. We are probably coming to one of the most exciting times in UAP history. As after the UAP report came out, there is probably more legitimacy towards the discussion around the serious existence of extraterrestrial life now more than ever. As of October 2022, NASA is pretty much coming clean and opening a new study into the research of UAP and extraterrestrial life. 16 hand-picked specialists have been selected to analyze former data and determine how to go forward observing future events. Now, the study is less focused on whether or not previous sightings are confirmed UAPs, since it's kind of hard to ascertain with missing data. So it's more focused on what observations will be needed to understand UAP sightings going forward. The team is going to include researchers and key personnel from all divisions, all walks of life, notably including former astronaut Scott Kelly, who formerly served as a pilot for the Space Shuttle Discovery, and also once held the world record for most days in space, so he probably knows a thing or two about objects floating in the stars. Now, Kelly himself doesn't personally believe aliens have been to Earth yet, saying, "I think there's life in the universe. Hopefully intelligent life, but I don't think they visit planet Earth." So there's some skeptics on the team, but hey, at least they're finally coming out to get to brass tacks on this thing. Officially, openly, the government is talking with us about studying this phenomena. This is amazing. Now, you know how scientists are. They gotta have some numbers on a paper before they'll believe it. An associate administrator at NASA, Thomas Zerbchin, said, "Data is the language of scientists and makes the unexplainable explainable. Exploring the unknown of space and the atmosphere is at the heart of who we are at NASA. This is maybe the most exciting time in history to be a UAP fan." Number 5, Project Acoustic Kitty. Have you ever tried to train a cat? I have too, and let me tell you from experience, it is not particularly easy. I can barely get them to agree to use like a litter box, let alone complete a task. But that very well could be because I am just one man and I don't have the government funding and might of the US military behind me. I'm sure if I had a little government funding, I could get these cats jumping through hoops and waiting more than 5 minutes to start screaming once their food dish is empty. So this is Project Acoustic Kitty, a CIA program that proposed the transformation of house cats into next generation cybernetically enhanced super spies. No, really. It sounds like it's the plot to a direct-to-VHS kids movie, but it was a real project. A team of animal behaviorists worked alongside Robin Michelson, who was one of the inventors of the human cochlear implant, with the hope of making one for cats. They would wire a cat with a battery, a compartment in its rib cage, and a wire running all the way to its inner ear. They believed they could control the cat's movements through ultrasonic sound, and they could use a transmitter also implanted in the cat to listen in on conversations. I don't know what kind of conversations they think a cat is getting up to, but cats mostly just lay in the sun. I feel like that's one of the bigger problems with this project. Now, whether or not this actually got past the drawing board and they actually Robocopped a cat is up for some debate. An ex-CIA officer grimly claims, and kind of hilariously in the darkest way, that the original Acoustic Kitty was struck by a taxi after they took him out of a van, and he took the Rainbow Road up to heaven to spy for the CIA on angels. A different report claims that the original cat lived out a happy life, he pursued journalism, and then was found dead in his apartment after publishing some anti-CIA sentiment. That's just a joke, don't look that up. Now, the only declassified document regarding the project is a redacted memorandum titled Views on Trained Cats, and it references this: cats cannot be similarly trained to approach, and then redacted. That's all we know, really. To quote Charlie Kelly from Always Sunny, "Cats do not abide by the laws of nature, D. Anyone who owned a cat should have been able to tell the CIA that teaching them to do anything that serves anyone but themselves is a lost cause." And if you're looking for more funny videos about cats, we don't really have a lot of that. That's elsewhere on the internet. But if you're looking for scary things, cryptids, conspiracies, ghouls, goblins, aliens, true crime, fake crime, just about anything freaky above the sun and below it, we've got lots of that in spades. So click on through, hit subscribe, and hit that little bell, and make sure you don't miss a single scream. But do that at the end of this video for me, would you kindly? We got way more secrets coming up for you. Number 4, Henry Shields' Flying Saucer. And one of these should probably be about aliens, right? The rest of them are going to be like secret CIA projects and stuff, but I feel like I should include just one alien thing to keep it a little fun and fresh and flirty, and also because I know you love the aliens. I know what drives the clicks around here. So let's talk a little about a declassified document regarding unidentified flying saucers coming to us from 1976. Captain Henry Shields of the US Air Force began his report by typing sometime in his his career, each pilot can be expected to encounter strange, unusual happenings which will never be adequately or entirely explained by logic or subsequent investigation. This story will be filed away and possibly forgotten, but it makes for interesting and possibly disturbing reading, which is a great way of prefacing, letting you know that whatever he's about to talk about is insane. The account begins describing a clear morning. The Iranian Air Force received a series of calls of unknown airborne objects described as bird-like or flying saucer-like, or like a brightly lit helicopter. Now, nothing should have been in the airspace at the time, and so an F-4 fighter jet was dispatched. As the plane followed, it made contact with a flying saucer-like object, and they lost all communications with ground control until they moved away from this strange object. They sent a second F-4 fighter after it, but that also experienced a power loss when it tried to fire at it, as if there was some sort of like tech field, some EMP field blocking them. The crews reported that they saw something detach from the saucer and fly towards the plane at top speed, but luckily was avoided. Now, it's unclear what happened, but the saucer escaped, and the crews of the planes reported seeing something land from the UFO, lighting up an area of the lake. They investigated at a nearby residence where the owners claimed they heard loud noises and very bright lights. So what was it? What was it they encountered then? It was far too early for this to be any sort of drone technology, really, and there's not really many other options for me to say. I think it was an alien, and who am I to say that that's not true?
Number 5 on this list is Bigfoot. Bigfoot, or the Sasquatch, is a big biped ape-like creature that is said to roam the forests of North America. This creature has been the topic of North American folklore for years and has had thousands of sightings. This legend is so widely known and researched that it even has a Bigfoot Field Researchers organization that has documented all of the reported sightings and counted them up from each area. To put it in perspective, Washington has over 2,000, California over 1,600, Pennsylvania with over 1,300, and many other states with similar numbers as well. Now, most people have chalked this up to being a legend with no actual legitimacy to it. The example given by most skeptics is that those who have seen Bigfoot didn't actually see the creature, but saw a bear or some other animal that resembled the Sasquatch instead. This explanation is good enough for most people, but believe it or not, it wasn't good enough for the American government. That's right, guys, the American government has actually investigated Bigfoot. It all started when one of the leading Bigfoot researchers, Peter Byrne, sent some unidentified hairs to the FBI. He told them that his team found these hairs and could not identify what type of animal it was. Now, rather than throw this out as being mumbo jumbo, the FBI actually took Peter seriously and analyzed the hairs. 4 decades later, the FBI declassified their Bigfoot file, and it turned out that their analysis of the hairs linked them to the deer family. Now, even though that may be the case, why did the FBI take this so seriously? Why would the actual American government spend time, money, and resources analyzing these hairs in a classified operation if there was no legitimacy to the Bigfoot claims? Now, this isn't evidence of the existence of Bigfoot. However, it makes me believe that the government, they might know a little bit more about this than they're letting on. Maybe they've actually encountered Bigfoot before, and they aren't quite ready to make the urban legend a reality. Number 4 on this list is weaponized lightning. The thought of weaponizing lightning seems like something out of a comic book. In fact, it's been portrayed in comic books like Thor or movies like Star Wars as a super special power that only somebody with incredible abilities can possess. That may not be totally true though, because the government has discovered a way to control it. It's all very complicated, but the concept is that lightning will follow a path of ionized air and can be directed to go anywhere we want. Manipulating lightning wasn't discovered by the United States government by accident, but it was very much on purpose. In 1967, the CIA was funding a super secret project to weaponize lightning and use it in warfare. This project was funded for some time until it was eventually shut down. The project was classified for decades until finally being released to the public many years later. The thing about all of this though is that some don't actually think they stopped trying. In fact, in 2012, an article by the BBC talked about how US Army scientists are still trying to develop a gun that will fire a bolt of lightning. This lightning rifle could fire off 50 billion watts of energy. That's more power than a large city would need to function. Turning lightning into a weapon is still being funded to this day. That's pretty scary to me because 50 billion watts feels like too much power for a human to be able to wield. It also begs the question, what other things is the government funding right now that they don't want us to know about. Number 3 on this list is the 2004 UFO. This UFO has been later called the Tic Tac and was massive news when the footage was finally released to the public a few years ago. On November 10th, 2004, Kevin Day saw a very strange object show up on his radar. It was too slow to be a plane, too fast to be a bird, and moving along an unconventional air path. Apparently, another crew member saw this object and said that it had the capability to drop from 60,000 feet to only 50 feet in the air without producing a sonic boom, and unlike any man-made aircraft that we've ever seen. Chad Underwood was the man who actually made the recording of this UFO, and it's clear that this thing is unlike any aircraft that we're familiar with. I imagine that most of you have seen this video before, but for those who haven't, let's roll a few seconds of it to show you what I mean.
Winds 120 knots to the west. Look at that thing, dude.
Now that video wasn't officially released by the Pentagon until many years later, and that leads a lot of people to ask the question, was this unidentified flying object actually the work of aliens? Did the government know about this thing flying through the air prior to the video and then needed to cover it up? Why is the government releasing the videos years later? Are they trying to slowly adjust us to the reality that aliens are real? Is this UFO even connected to aliens, or is it something else entirely? All of these questions have arisen in regards to this video, and as one would expect, the government isn't exactly forthcoming with all the answers. This video doesn't prove the existence of aliens. In fact, it doesn't really prove a whole lot of anything. As of right now, it's something that we just simply can't explain, or as some people have theorized, maybe that's just what the government wants us to think.
Number 3, Operation Paperclip. Ooh, this one's a doozy. In the waning years of World War II, around 1945, the US was beginning to worry that they needed an edge against the Soviet Union in the coming future, and wanted to take every single advantage they could find at their disposal for advancements in technology, even if that meant picking up from some seriously dubious sources. It was called Operation Paperclip, and it was a secret United States intelligence program in which more than 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians were taken from Germany's National Socialist Party to come work for the United States and forget about all of that other stuff. When large numbers of German scientists began to be discovered in April of 1945, the US set up a few overnight makeshift interrogation centers in Paris and in Frankfurt. This early draft of the project was called Operation Overcast, and this initial idea was that this was going to help end the war against the Japanese, and it would immediately benefit post-World War II research. Eventually, the project got renamed from Overcast to Paperclip in reference to how the officers would attach a little paperclip to the folders of the rocket experts they wanted to pluck and bring over to America. Now, in its conception, the project's first goal and idea behind it was this thinking that somebody had to take these scientists, right? And if America didn't pluck all of these morally gray scientists, somebody else would have. And they feared that they would have fled to Argentina or Egypt, which had been known to be sympathetic to German National Socialism, and I guess it was better if they were there where they could be observed than somewhere else where they could do who knows what. The Soviets actually had a similar project to this idea, mirroring it, calling it Operation Ozofikam, and I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, occurring during 1946, and that's a whole different video. Now, these scientists blended into American life, and they got themselves some cushy jobs at lofty positions. You would not believe some of the places some of these guys went. A number of them went to NASA. Here's a terrible fact for you. A great deal of the advancements and knowledge we have about rockets and spacesuits and spaceflight technology can all be directly traced to members of the project and former members of a certain nationalist socialist party. Number 2, MK Ultra. If you're like one of the 1.4 billion people who've turned into Netflix for Stranger Things, you're probably a big fan of all the wacky stuff that goes on in Hawkins. Aliens from another dimension, Steve Harrington's hair, psychic super soldiers. It's fun to see such fantastical concepts on the screen, you know? That kind of stuff only exists in TV. And of course in the grim reality where the CIA really did try to develop brainwashing, mind control, and astral projection technology. Now, the most infamous among them by far is Project MK Ultra, sometimes known as Project Monarch. To begin to even truly scrape the surface of this subject, we need a lot more time than the 2-minute window we've got here, but we can cover the absolute basics about this super super duper incredibly very real thing the American government was very involved in. Look it up after this video, please. I can't discuss everything, but participants of the MK Ultra trials were put through unimaginable torment, electrocution, unknowingly dosing subjects with illicit narcotics. Now, many MK Ultra documents have been destroyed over the years by the CIA's direction, but what documents that have been declassified gave us a lot of insight into the program. See, the CIA was worried again that the Soviets were making better leaps in technology over them and were winning all sorts of landmark races. So they were doing everything they could to get their edge over the Soviets, like we talked about in the last point. And one of these forays was interrogation technology. They believed that with the aid of certain illicit substances, some mental gymnastics, they could outright dominate and control another human being's brain. The project's goal outright was stated to enhance the abilities of individuals to withstand coercion, produce shock, confusion, and amnesia, to create materials which will cause the victim to age faster, slower, to promote illogical thinking, and impulsiveness to the point where the recipient would be discredited. So it's not quite 11 and the Upside Down, but it is just as cruel. Now, interestingly, a plot point in the show was that 11's mother was kind of cruelly experimented on. She didn't really know what she was signing up for at all and was left ravaged by the experience afterwards. This is really not that different from what actually happened, where a grand majority of the test subjects for MK Ultra Project Monarch were people like homeless people, convicts, or people with nowhere else left to turn who were willing to turn a blind eye to some seriously dubious experimentation for very little in the way of compensation. And number 1, the Gateway experience. Now, as I just said, this is far from the only bizarre mental training the CIA ever dipped their fingers in. Have you ever seen the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats? Probably not. It's an indie movie from the early 2000s. It's great. George Clooney and Obi-Wan Kenobi is in. I forget his real name, Ewan McGregor. The movie talks about a secret division of the US Army that was experimenting with expanding their consciousness. Sounds pretty far out and groovy, right, man? Well, enter the Gateway experience. It sounds like weaponized hippies, and it kind of was. The goal was that subjects would be able to harness the full extent of their brain, and that with enough practice, subjects would be able to release the control of their consciousness from this mortal shell, from this meat prison that keeps us all, and release us out into these planes of existence that you and I are just far too feeble to ever understand. Now, the final landmark for this project, the final idea, was mental time travel, which sounds wild, but I don't know when you guys are going to realize you can't make up stuff weirder than actual things the CIA has done. This idea is that once your consciousness existed outside of meat space, you could access your memories and relive them and view them from a third-person perspective of an outsider. You'd be able to take in stock of your surroundings and gather data and intel no one else could have. So, right now, I'm looking into a camera, I'm talking into this thing, but later on in the future, I can imagine myself and see myself behind the camera, watch myself making all these mistakes from a different perspective. Now, I'd love to be able to explain the intricacies of what this project involved, but I only have so much time to do, so please do some homework after this video if you're interested in this subject. It's really fascinating. The idea was that with a melange of binaural beats, guided meditation, this would affect the flow of your blood, alter your heartbeat, and start to awaken the brain in the ways we don't use it, get that third eye going. They said if your brain is like a light, the process of the Gateway experience was to try to focus that light into a laser beam. So I'm sure you're eager, wondering if it worked. Officially, as far as we know, no one was able to mentally time travel. Project director Robert Monroe found himself frustrated that he didn't have enough time to produce results, and maintained that if he had a few more years, he would have produced something groundbreaking. Of course, that's if you believe the project was abandoned. For all we know, he could have already perfected it, gone back in time, and fixed it all the way back then.
Number 2 on this list is the UFO program. Keeping on the train of UFOs, it's currently believed that the government has already discovered some and are currently keeping them hidden from the public. Now, I should be a little bit more specific about this because the term UFO specifically refers to flying objects. The reports that I'll be referring to aren't specifically about objects being able to fly, but that the government is currently in possession of off-world vehicles. Specifically, what these vehicles can do is not disclosed. Now, the whole existence of a secretive government-run program specifically investigating UFOs and otherworldly vehicles, it's been debated for years. However, it's largely believed at this point that the government does have a program like this and likes to keep all of their findings from the public. Now, just the existence of a program like this doesn't mean that the government has some secret, scary alien discovery. However, at the very least, it means that they have seen enough evidence of something going on to invest lots of money into discovering what it is. Now, the reason that I say the government might have some off-world vehicles that they're keeping from the public is because of the reports from Eric Davis. Eric Davis was an astrophysicist who worked for the Pentagon, and he was part of the UFO program. He's come out and talked about some of the things they had him work on. He says that some of those things he investigated were off-world vehicles not made on this Earth. He then goes on to say that we couldn't make the materials ourselves. This is an astrophysicist who's worked on some extremely classified material coming out and saying this. In my mind, that's pretty clear-cut evidence that the government is currently in possession of some secret object that they don't want the public to know about. Whether this object is an indicator of extraterrestrial life or something else is currently unknown, and as of right now, seems like the government wants to keep it that way. Number 1 on this list is Iran's military dolphins. That's right, guys, you heard me correctly. Iran's military dolphins. The country of Iran is currently in possession of militarized dolphins trained to blow up ships. Truthfully, this story is just one big government controversy. It all started when the Soviets started developing these secret dolphin soldiers. They trained these intelligent aquatic mammals to become weapons of the sea. They attached harpoons on the dolphin's back and trained the creatures to use them, and then also strapped bombs to the dolphins and trained them so that they could become suicide bombers of the ocean. The thinking was that they could send these dolphins out to blow up American submarines. The dolphins were able to tell the difference between an American sub and a Soviet sub based on the sounds that the propeller made. All of this sounds like it came straight out of a cartoon, but I swear that it's actually true. In 1991, the Soviet Union fell, and then 9 years later their dolphin project lost its funding. But rather than let the dolphins die or release these weaponized creatures into the oceans, they sold them to Iran. Boris Zuharid, the Russian dolphin trainer, has come out and said, "If I were a sadist, then I could have remained in Sevastopol, but I cannot bear to see my animals starve. We're out of medicine, which costs thousands of dollars, and have no more fish or food supplements." But after they were sold to Iran, they weren't out of food or supplements at all. In fact, all reports suggest that the Iranian government has continued with this weaponized dolphin program and are still in possession of them. This isn't widely talked about because the Iranian government doesn't really want people to know about their secret ocean weapon. Not just because they don't want other governments to know about their use of the dolphins, but also because of the moral questions that arise with this information. Is it acceptable to weaponize a dolphin and have it become a suicide bomber? Iran doesn't really want that type of media coverage. It's really kind of frightening to think about, but our favorite aquatic mammals? They could actually be trained to kill us. Number 2 on this list is Geronimo Pratt. This is truly a really sad story and a very bad look for the FBI. Geronimo Pratt was a decorated war vet who fought in Vietnam. Upon returning to America, he decided to study political science. During his studies, he fell in love with the group the Black Panthers and became deeply involved with them. For those who don't know, Google describes this party as a Marxist-Leninist Black Power political organization founded by college students Bobby Seale and Hugh P. Newton in October 1966 in Oakland, California. This group had a heavy focus on self-defense, and considering Pratt was a war vet, he was appointed the title of Minister of Defense very quickly. The FBI didn't like this very much and decided that it wasn't in their benefit to have Pratt in this position of power, so they decided to get rid of him. Mike Devlin says that the agency got their chance in 1968 when 2 black men robbed 27-year-old Caroline Oslin and her husband Kenneth on a tennis court in Santa Monica, California. When they failed to produce enough cash to satisfy the men, they were riddled with bullets. Kenneth Olson survived, but Caroline died 11 days later. Pratt was charged with the crime and subjected to a trial orchestrated by the FBI. The full scope of their influence is unknown, but the allegations run deep. Information was withheld from the jury, including the fact that Kenneth Olson, who identified Pratt as his wife's killer, had previously chosen another man. Even more damning, the FBI lost wiretap records that backed Pratt's alibi. Pratt ended up serving 27 years in prison until finally in 1997 his sentence was overturned because it was revealed that one of the witnesses that testified against him was an FBI informant. Pratt served 27 years in jail for a crime he most likely never committed, all because the FBI decided that they wanted him there. And finally, number 1 on this list is Move. MOVE was a cult-like group of black liberationalists who preached a return to nature. Centered in a Philadelphia row house, this commune had windows covered with plywood and rotting, vermin-infested compost piles in the backyard. Group members stockpiled firearms and screamed obscenity-laden mantras through a bullhorn into the wee hours of the morning. Frustrated neighbors pleaded with the authorities to do something, and on May 13, 1985, an army of city officials, firefighters, and police officers gathered outside the house to evict MOVE. The group refused to budge, and police fired tear gas canisters inside. A gun battle ensued, and at 5:30 that evening, a helicopter dropped a C4 bomb on the house. In the ensuing carnage, 61 houses burned to the ground and 11 people died, including 5 children. Although a host of emergency personnel stood by, nobody did anything to help. Yeah, absolutely horrible, guys. Well, after a massive backlash ensued, it was found out that the FBI had actually given the police force this C4, but there was no official record of them actually doing so. For the most part, this was just pushed under the rug and hardly anyone was punished. Whether they had any hand in telling emergency personnel to sit by and do nothing is anyone's guess, but it's been widely speculated upon ever since the tragedy happened.